Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. You're very welcome to our review show, and we're looking back at all the action from the weekend. Of course, there were big games against Tyrone this week for our football teams. Both the men and the ladies recorded wins over their old rivals. On Saturday night in the Box Athletic Grounds, Armagh were much the better team against Tyrone, and I caught up with Enda McGinley after the game. He was working for RTE that night, so I talked to the Tyrone legend after the game and he gave us his thoughts. So we're going to hear from Enda first, and then I'll give a roundup of how the hurlers and the ladies done this week. So we'll hear from Enda now, and then we'll go into part two. We're after witnessing a huge win for Armagh over old rivals Tyrone in the second round of the National League. I'm delighted to be joined by former Tyrone player Enda McGinley. And Enda, you were on RTE commentary there. I'm going to put you through more pain here possibly, but I suppose give us your thoughts straight after the game.
How generous can you be to Armagh on one day here? I thought Armagh were exceptional. Like, obviously the joys of the National League is we're all that hungry for football that you look at the first game and everybody jumps to conclusions and see where various teams are, and Tyrone were coming out with a lot of plaudits, and I think Tyrone will still come good. Armagh were coming out with more questions about them, and then we seen today, I thought Armagh were exceptional. I thought the energy they brought to the game, the hunger, their tackling was ferocious, and then the incisiveness of their forward play, like it was something else, and Tyrone really hadn't a match to it. So yeah, Armagh well worthy and have laid down quite the marker.
And how big was the breeze? How big a factor was that, Enda? Because Armagh kicked 4 2-pointers in that first half and could have now won Andrew Murren, only Niall Morgan got his fingertips to it. That's an 8-point deficit already, and at half time I think it was 114 to 3 points, so that had a huge factor in the game.
It did have a huge factor. Tyrone struggled against playing against the wind, so you were sort of thinking, okay, this is going to be very difficult. Armagh came out in the second half and had the first 3 points, so against the very same wind. So the wind, yes, it is definitely a factor, but again, it's the quality of play that you bring to it, and Armagh brought much greater quality. Like, they scored much more readily against that wind than Tyrone did. Armagh, I think, had 4 wides out of whatever they hit. Like, they really had a serious day in front of the posts. Tyrone were more laboured. Armagh brought huge energy. Like, whenever Armagh were counter-attacking, the pace that they brought was at a different level compared to Tyrone, and when they were up front and they were sort of spread out around that arc, again they were looking to cut through and they were hitting at proper pace. Their handling was cleaner. Tyrone coughed up some cheap turnovers. So again, look, Tyrone weren't good today. Armagh were very good. I don't think there's that gap between the teams, but that's certainly how it was today. And on our preview show, we were talking about Kyle Coney on the show on Thursday, and we were talking about Ethan Rafferty and if he was going to start and the benefits of starting him. He was a late addition. There was 5 late additions to the Armagh team. What a game he had. Yeah, Ethan Rafferty was brilliant, and again, the new rules are set up to have that amount of influence. It was interesting. Tyrone obviously calculated with the wind, playing against the wind in the first half, not to send Morgan up the pitch just as much. He was quite reserved in terms of his placement on the pitch. Came up the pitch, but only came up very, very slowly and almost hesitantly, whereas Ethan Rafferty was straight up the pitch in the second half. And again, Morgan obviously was coming out in the second half when they were playing with the wind, but at that stage obviously Armagh knew that was going to be coming and were well enough set up for it. Again, Armagh's tackling at the back, their energy that they brought, the way they were sprinting back to make sure they had numbers back there, was just at a different level, unfortunately, for Tyrone. And Armagh obviously without Rian O'Neill too, who isn't going to be part of the panel for the meantime anyway. But the 10 different scores tonight, and I know Tomas McCormick and I think Darragh McMullen got their first ever scores for Armagh, so the wheel keeps turning in terms of these young fellas coming through, and we know what Oisín Condy has as well. Yeah, absolutely. There was plenty of change in that Armagh side. It wasn't just all of the All-Ireland winning team that you were looking at. There was plenty of new blood there, and they done really, really well. So yeah, I think for Armagh, like, Kieran McGeaney will be delighted with that. Last week was obviously a tough enough one down in there, but the way the National League is, it'll swing and change with the new rules. I think teams will be a wee bit all over the place. Home venue is absolutely massive. We seen that last week. I think there was only 2 away wins across the whole National League last week, so home win definitely has an advantage. Playing with the wind potentially in the first half could be a significant feature too, although it didn't work well. I think Armagh played with a significant wind last week and didn't bring the same energy against Galway. Well, they brought it today. And just finally, and we've seen the new rules in play now twice in competitive league action. What's your roundup after 2 rounds? How do you feel about them? Yeah, look, the game is definitely more fast. It is there's less of that sort of blanket defence, obviously. The role of the goalkeeper at the minute, the way the rules stand, is absolutely massive, and that's going to be a key feature. There's so many nuances to it that we're only getting used to. I'm still not sure about the 2-point arc. I really am not. There's so much great scores, there's so much great plays that are being devalued now because they're not drives from distance, if you know what I mean. And there's something about a drive from distance in certain conditions is less skillful than a really well worked score. So why is it worth twice the amount? But for everybody, there'll be certain things they'll like and certain things they'll not like. It'll be the collective thing. The one thing I would say is, this is my first time watching it live. There's a lot to get your head around. There's a lot to wrap your head around. If the game feels much more confused now, much more complicated now, is it overly complex? Like, I know that was one of the things the FRC spoke about at the start, was that they wanted to sort of clear out and make some things simpler. The game is way more complex at the minute now. Is that just because it's new, or is it just there's so many rule changes there? I'm not quite sure, but it is what it is. In a few rounds we'll start to see the real patterns emerge.
And look, it all change this weekend.
Absolutely, like that goalkeeper thing. Like teams could really start building their game plan around that very thing, and then in the mouth of championship it could be gone. So that hanging over is really, really difficult. I think the FRC needs to certainly give early indications of where they might be heading with certain rules, because teams only have those several games to get ready for championship. And while we're all okay with the National League being a wee bit all over the place in terms of the new rules and teams not being settled and everything being in a wee state of flux, I think come championship time everybody wants their head well wrapped around the rules and want to be well set up for them. So certainly the likes of the goalkeeping rule, which could have a massive bearing, the likes of the 2-point arc, which could have a massive bearing, those things you would like put to bed one way or the other pretty early if they can.
Well, we'll find out in the next weeks and months what's going to be in, what's going to be out, and how it's all going to affect the game. But Enda, thanks very much for coming on, and great to hear your thoughts on the game.
Absolutely, typical to get on a Tyrone man on a day. Just hammer us out the gate.
So, as me and Enda discussed there in part one, we were talking about the scores on the night for both Armagh and Tyrone, and as we see it, Andrew Merlin top scored on the night. He hit 1-4, and Ethan Raverty, of course, landing 2 2-pointers as well as a single point, so he hit 5 on the night. And we had Ross McQuillan and Aidan Falker also chipping in with 2-pointers, while Tomas McCormack and Darren McMullen, they got their first ever points for Armagh. So congratulations to them two boys for getting off the mark in terms of scoring in the orange and white. So that leaves the table now at the minute. Of course, Donegal and Kerry have only played once. They were due to play in round one and the game didn't take place, so they're going to play next week, and that'll be the only game on next week, the only football game on next week, and that's that postponed fixture. So the league table at the minute, it's Galway on top. They of course beat Armagh last week, and they beat Mayo this weekend as well. So that's 2 wins from their 2 outings, sees them on 4 points. There's a lot of teams on 2 points, with Donegal, Kerry, Armagh, Tyrone and Dublin all picking up 1 point. 1 win, so far in the league. So they're all on 2 points. And at the bottom of the table, it's Derry and Mayo who are in immediate trouble. They've both played 2 and lost 2. Derry lost to Kerry in round 2, while Mayo tasted defeat to their Connacht rivals Galway. So that's how the table sits at the minute. Armagh currently in the top 4, but as you can see, they're joint second with 4 other teams. So there's a lot to happen in Division 1 before the season's out. On to the hurlers then. They travelled to Roscommon this weekend and they suffered a hefty 15-point defeat in Roscommon in the first round of the league. Roscommon did play last week. They played London, away to London, and lost, but this was Armagh's first outing of the campaign. 8 points was the difference at the break, while a second half goal for the Rossies grew the gap even further. Roscommon made the brighter start to proceedings and they fired over the first 2 scores inside the opening 5 minutes. Armagh did respond at the other end as Shea Harvey split the posts for the travelling side. Roscommon shot back with another brace of points, and that gave them an early 4-1 advantage. Armagh come back into it with a Donny McGee free, while Conor Anahan and McGee traded scores with the opposition. The Rossies were in fine form in front of the posts, and they tagged on a further 5 unanswered scores in an 8-minute blitz. Park McNaughton briefly halted the Roscommon scoring spree as he split the posts for the Archer County. Roscommon claimed a further 3 points on the bounce, with Danny McGee once again offering another response for Armagh. That left Kieran McKeegan's men trailing by 8 points when the half-time whistle sounded, with the half-time score reading 0-14 to 0-6 to Roscommon. Roscommon scored 2 more frees at the start of the second half, and McGee got Armagh up and running before Roscommon hit the net for the first time, and that widened the gap. They followed up with 2 points on the trot, and Roscommon were also reduced to 14 men, but the margin was so wide it didn't really have that much of an impact on the game. Park McNaughton swung over his second score of the afternoon, but the Rossies nabbed a further 5 points in a row. Armagh had the final say on the day, with substitute Shay Gaffney putting over a point later on. It's a poor start to the campaign for the Archer County, and the hurlers must bounce back next week. They will host Wicklow next Saturday, so they'll hope that they can get their campaign up and running next week with a win. The scores on the day then, Danny McGee was the top scorer for Armagh. He had 5 points, all coming from frees. Park McNaughton chipped in with 2, while Shay Harvey, Conor Anahan and Shay Gaffney all hit a point apiece. So the Division 3 hurling table then, it's London who are at the top. As I mentioned, they beat Roscommon last week and had another win this weekend, so they sit with 4 points, 2 wins from 2 games. Roscommon, having been beat last week, got back to winning ways this week, so they're on 2 points alongside Cavan and Wicklow, who picked up victories this weekend. Mayo have yet to actually play a game, so they sit in 5th position. They're on 0 points, but of course they're above Sligo and Armagh just due to score difference. Sligo have lost both their games, while Armagh are minus 15 in terms of score difference at the minute. So a big game coming down the tracks for the hurlers next week as they take on Wicklow in the Box at Athletic Grounds. On to the ladies then, and they were playing Tyrone at St Paul's on Sunday, and a stunning second half display was enough for the current Division 1 league champions to get over their old rivals. The sides were all square at the break, but the Archer County were the dominant force once the sides switched ends in the second half. Tyrone actually failed to score after the turnaround, and a yellow card to corner forward Chloe McCaffrey midway through the second period left last year's beaten intermediate championship finalists with almost no chance. Armagh, who needed 3 goals last weekend to secure an opening day win over All-Ireland champions Kerry, they didn't hit the net this time around, but they kept the scoreboard ticking over with points. It was the Red Hounds who were the commanding side during the opening exchanges, and as the rain trickled down at St Paul's, the visiting side raced into a 4-1 lead. Maria Canavan, her side's only scorer in their 4-4 to 0-2 defeat to Meath last weekend, got up on things up and running with a pointed free. Armagh top scorer on the day, Niamh Reel, played provider early on, and she set up the energetic Emily Druce for the equaliser. Canavan hammered over 2 more points, with Chloe McCaffrey also raising a white flag to put her side 3 points ahead, 4 points to 1. That gap could have been wider, but McCaffrey's goal chance sailed harmlessly wide past the post. Caroline O'Hanlon pointed, and 2 frees from Reel, 2 points from Reel, including a marvellous outside of the boot effort, got the Archer girls back on level terms. Canavan and Niamh Reel traded scores before half-time, and that brought the half to a close with the sides tied 0-13 apiece after half an hour's action. Within 90 seconds of the second period, Armagh stretched the lead with Emily Druce, Niamh Coleman and Caroline O'Hanlon all firing over scores. Roisin Mulligan and Niamh Reel grew the lead, and Tyrone were actually reduced to 14 players for a 10-minute period, with McCaffrey picking up a yellow card and spending 10 minutes in the sin bin. Armagh could have had a goal with Emily Druce pushing through, but the keeper made a really good save. But Armagh still hit on the points, with Reel landing another 4, while substitute Kiva McNally also got on the score sheet, as did her Derrynews clubmate Maeve Lennon towards the end of the game. So that victory sets Armagh up well. They're heading to Dublin next weekend, and they'll be keen to extend their winning run. Of course, they beat Kerry last week, So that's 2 from 2 from the Armagh ladies. And as we can see on the league table, they're currently top of the league. They've won both games, and as we know, for a win in the ladies' game, it's 3 points. So they have 6 points at the minute. Meath, Waterford, Kildare, and Dublin are all on 3 points, but Meath and Mayo are due to play on Monday night, so that the table could change on Monday night. But at the minute, it's Armagh currently on top. Mayo, Kerry, and Tyrone have all lost their recent games. Tyrone have lost both their games, so they're at the bottom of the table, while Kerry and Mayo have lost one. But as I mentioned, Mayo are playing on Monday night, so they do have a chance to get off their first points of the season. In terms of scoring, then, Niamh Reel was the top scorer for Armagh on the day. She hit 0-8, with 5 of those coming from frees. Caroline O'Hanlon hit 2, 1 in each half. Emily Druce got 2, while Roisin Mulligan, Niamh Coleman, Maeve Lennon, and Kiva McNally all scored a point apiece. For Tyrone, there were only 2 scores on the day, with Maria Canavan hitting 4 and Chloe McCaffrey grabbing 1 point. So that's all we have for this week's show. That's a roundup of all the action from the weekend. Thanks to Enda for coming on and giving us his thoughts after Armagh's win over Tyrone on Saturday night. There's no football action next week. There's no men's football action next week, but the hurlers and the ladies are back in action. So we'll be covering that as usual with match reports, previews, interviews, everything else that goes with it. We'll be covering them as usual. So make sure to give us a follow on any of our social media pages. We're on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. So give us a follow and give us a subscribe on YouTube or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. So that's all for today's review show. Thanks everybody for tuning in.
Watching